So at this point, folks, everybody is seeing James's computer, or Jim, you prefer.
Okay, so as James said, I'm Jim Durocher. If he calls me James, that's okay, because that's usually what I go by, but there are too many Jameses around here, especially in the health sciences area, so this is, I just go by Jim here. Now, on my screen, I have my Sinclair Home, so I can load up my Blackboard. Before we get into Blackboard, though, there are some links I think will be helpful to you should you need any further assistance with Blackboard. Franco Iacobacci had generously, a couple of years ago when he first became the coordinator for Blackboard, wrote up a few quick reference guides. And so we can get to it just by going into the college links of your My Sinclair and then to the Center of Academic Excellence. When that opens up, you can scroll down, or sorry, at the center or Blackboard Help is on the top bar here. And when you click on that, it will give you some information of who to contact, Blackboard Help. And then if you need help setting up your Blackboard course content, this is basically the basics that we're going over today, all of this. So what we're going to be covering is how to enable the edit mode, basically how to enable Blackboard as an instructor, and some of the things that you want to do before you open this up to the students. Basic setup for your course, adding content, set up the grade center for your course itself, and create a grade center column for assessment that can be used for your weighted assessments and weighted marks. Make your course available to the students and making an announcement to your students there. We might jump a little bit out of order in one or two sections just so that I can edit without my students seeing everything. So first and foremost, when we load up Blackboard, you'll have your courses listed on the side. In my case, I'm going to be using my medical imaging from 20 Winter. So a little bit of background on myself before we get into this. I'm in the School of Engineering Technology. I'm a biomedical engineering technologist, and my profession is ultimately working in healthcare. So I repair and maintain medical devices for a living, and some of my courses don't seem to necessarily make sense to that, but medical imaging is a course where I teach about, you know, X-rays, MRIs, and ultrasound technologies. So if I ever want to get back to all my courses, I can hit my institution in the top corner, and that brings me back to where all of my courses are. So again, I'll go back into medical imaging. Now on the side here, what we want to take a note of is in this top right corner, you can see that there's a tab that says edit mode is on, and I can click it and edit mode is off. If it is off, if you're having problems identifying that I can't change anything, I can't add anything, I can't modify anything, take a look to make sure that edit mode is turned on. If it is off, it will not work. Further to the side here, this make unavailable, this lock, if I click that lock, I can now do any modification to this and it is unavailable to my students. This is the one I'm going out of order on, if only because I don't want my students to see all the changes that I'm going to be making actively. So by doing this, it's locking them out. They can't access this section while I'm in it. So if you are using an active Blackboard for this, if you're following along, make sure that you are locked out. You're locking your students out, rather. When you've done some change, if you want to take a look at how it's going to appear to the students, if you're just unsure what they're looking at, this eye in the corner is going to be entering your student preview. When you do so, you get this yellow bar in the top, and that yellow bar is indicating that the student preview mode is on. I can do anything. I can change anything that a student would be able to. This is a great way to see if they have more control than you want them to have. And at the end of it, if I hit preview, I'll be prompted to say, do I want to keep the changes that I've made, if I've made a discussion board chat or something, or if I want to delete all the information that I have done. And so it defaults to the delete, and that is recommended, and I usually just hit continue with that. It'll exit the student preview window, and I'll be down over on the side. Now, one thing that you'll notice that if you're ever in the college here and you are duplicating your desktop onto a PowerPoint projector, what you'll find is that many times these thin clients will have this bar shoved to the side, and you won't have that left sidebar. So on the side, about a third of the way down the screen, there will be this arrow. It'll likely be disappeared for you until you roll your mouse over it. So you'll be able to just click that, and you'll get your left sidebar. The main control panel that you will have, that students will not have access to, will be this course management in the bottom section of it. It's the gray panel. What we're going to be working with in there will be our grade center, our course tools, our customization. For now, what we're going to do is take a look at how to hide your course links to protect the content, to make sure that students only have access to what you want them to have. So what we can do is go down onto the green menu and go to Tools. When we click on this, you can hide certain links. You can hide links that you don't want the students to be able to access or modify or add. If you don't want a discussion board, then you can hide that link. So some of the ones that I'm going to be hiding here are going to be, according to Franco's guide here, we're going to be hiding the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. So we are going to hide groups as well. They don't need to see that. Pardon?
If they have a class.
If they have a class, yes.
Yeah.
If
you use groups, then don't hide it. If you don't use groups, then go ahead and hide it so you're not, so they don't have a lot of options.
Right. And so what James said, if you couldn't hear, is ultimately if you have a course that is broken up into groups, for one of my classes is a project class where I have dependent groups with each other. So this I have groups on so that I can take a look at and assign things to just that group. But for this case, we're going to turn groups off. We can turn off a discussion board. Again, if you are not wanting to use a discussion board and have just throw out this idea and then have back and forth with your students, in an online environment, you may want to keep this on. But this is where you can go to hide all these links. Now, with groups, one of the reasons that I kept this one on, even though, or rather I turned it off, is that it is one of the special options. Same thing with the discussion board, because in the top right or top left here on the green panel, you have discussions and groups here. And I've turned off the link, but I still have the link on the side of the screen. It just won't go anywhere. So what we need to do is go to the arrow and hide link. So now it is hidden on the main panel as well as the link itself. One of the options that you have with Blackboard is I can send an email to the entire class. I can communicate with the class. I can communicate with just the instructors if there are multiple instructors for a particular course. The students, likewise, can do that as well. Many of you may not want the students to be able to mass email every other student. So what we can do is go down into the gray section, and on customization, you go down to tool availability. This will prompt you with all the different options that Blackboard will allow, and you can scroll down to email. And you'll see that email, unlike most others, has this drop-down arrow. By doing so, you can click on email settings, and this is where you'll be able to see whether or not you want your student to email all groups. That's usually one that we would disconnect if you don't have a class that requires it. All student users is another good one to get rid of, as well as all users. Now, what's important to note here is that this will not limit your use. It'll only limit what the students can see. You will still have access to email all observer units or users. You will be able to access all student users. And so right on the top, the instructor can disable the student's ability to email all users and groups in a course, but you will be able to. So after you've done this and you've selected all users, student users, and all groups, if you don't want to, that's okay. You can just hit submit. There's always a submit button in the bottom right corner. Sorry, not always, but 90% of the time you're going to have a submit in the bottom corner. If you just move on to the next section, it will not save it. So you will need to hit that submit button, and then you can hit cancel to quit. That's a basic background on how you can hide some information from the students. This is something else that you'll be able to look through if you truly want to, just to see the different ones that you want. If you want to remove a calendar or have a calendar viewable for them, then that's something that you can do in here. What we're going to do though is add some contact information. It is so much easier, I have found, to have the students always have access to your office hours or any other information like that, rather than them just showing up to your office unannounced. Even if you post it on your wall, that doesn't mean that they're going to listen. But if you go into the information session, what we can have are some content or contact information. So what we'll do is we can hover over, you don't need to click on it. If you hover over build content, you can create an item. The name of the item, you can just make it as contact information. And then inside here, you'll be able to add your content information. In general, I'd be putting my name, my email address. Just by hitting return or enter key, you'll be able to scroll down. This becomes its own text box. You will need to click out of it to continue on scrolling. If I'm one of the most annoying things that you'll see happen is when you start to scroll down the screen and then you end up getting your cursor inside the message board, it ends up just scrolling that instead. So be wary of that. It is very annoying when that happens.
And I'm sure you'll want to put your office hours.
And that's the other thing, yes. So we'll be putting your if you want to put your contact extension as well, you can do that. And then you'll just put your office hours. If you set this up for an online, this will be when they would expect you to respond. You may be able to respond a little bit sooner than that, but your office hours will be something that you should try to maintain. But your office hours, you can put them on there, and it will be shown in the full message. So I'll just put Monday 11 till 1 o'clock. After I'm done this, if I wanted to attach a schedule, I can attach a file. I can attach my schedule to this. I can either browse my course content or I can browse my computer. On the bottom, the standard options, these appear for most of the items that you'll be able to add on there and permit users to view this content. You will always be able to see it, but whether or not the students are able to see this. If I am ready for them to see this, I can hit permit students to view this. It defaults to yes. And then I can track the number of views. If I want to send out a message to the class and I wanted to make sure that everyone read it, I'll be able to track who has read it. Track the number of views. It'll say who has viewed this how many times. If I only want to set it up for a day and say now is the time to apply to this job that I found, you can set a time availability. So it'll display after whatever time I say, and I will only allow it to display until a certain date. If I don't click on the display until, it will forever be available to the students. So once I'm done, I can click submit, and then at the bottom here, it will have my contact information. If I choose to put that more important, I can bring it up to the top. Now on the bottom, this is what you would see. The item is not available. So this is my Akindi link for multiple choice tests. So this Akindi link, I don't want the students to be able to click and launch Akindi, so I can. They won't be able to. If you see that, students can't read. I do have one question right here.
Track number of views.
Yes.
How do you go check it? So you click it, now how I want to see you view.
Okay, so if I go into edit, so I've got this so that statistics tracking is on, and I can view statistics report. So in this case, the last run, or sorry, it's not a scheduled event. I would be able to, if I had 100 students, I would be able to filter through. But the important information is that you'll read this enabled statistics tracking, and then when you click on the drop-down menu, you can find view statistics report there. If I want to turn that back off, I can just click that link that says statistics tracking on off, and I can turn it back to off, and it will display no information up there. So if I go into adding course material, I can again go to build content, and in my case I have my course outline here. So let me just quickly download that here. So I'm going to rebuild my course outline. So I'm going to now go to build content instead of clicking on an item to just make a note like my either homework marks or my contact information. I can go to build a file. So what do I want the name that the students will see? I will say this is the course outline. The asterisk on the side indicates a required field. So I need to have a name, and if I'm building a file, I need to have a file. So if I browse my computer, I just saved my course outline to the desktop, so I can do that again. If I choose to select a different file, it'll immediately erase everything, and I will have to go back to browse my computer to find the file and rename it again. So don't hit that button if you don't want to. Some of the file options down here, if I want it to open into a new window, so if I click on the link, you saw that mine opened up a new window so that I could view the PDF rather than overwriting on top of my Blackboard. If I still want to access my Blackboard, and if you still want them to access, then you can click open in a new window, and it will open to a new tab on your screen. Again, you have your standard options here, your permit users to view this content, and that is fine with, it'll be the same information as before. You can track who has viewed the course outline, not an immense amount of value to that, but once I'm done, I can hit submit.
I would disagree.
Really?
Right.
So that's from Linda Hill. So I'm going to take her information from the CAE as gospel right there. So for course outline and syllabus, she actually absolutely recommends tracking your statistics so that if a student ever tries to perform a grade appeal, then you will be able to have more argument to say that you've only ever looked at this data at the very end of the semester when you're trying to argue something, or not at all in many cases. So enabled statistic tracking for course outline. Thank you very much. So if I want to add lecture material, what you can do is go into course content, and you will, in my case here, I break up my folders into the weeks and what information is going to be contained in there. I will be able to create a new content folder. So by going into content folder, I can then make some new file. So if you base this off of weeks and not give dates, so let's go week 11. In here, in my case, I like to add the name of the PowerPoint slides or whatever I'm adding into the file, just so that the students can quickly see, when did we cover this? Oh, it would have been in this week. So in this case, I've got an X-ray review coming up. So X-ray review, and so then I can throw that PowerPoint slide out for them. Again, permit viewers to view this content. If I'm not ready yet, I want to upload everything first, I can hit no. Or if I so choose, I can say that I only want them to see it after the day today. So I will be 100% done today. I can say that it'll be done on March 20th. It'll default to your date and time, and then you'll just need to move that time. So I'll say that at 10 o'clock in the morning, it'll go live for the students. And again, remember that I'm locked out, so my students will not actually be able to see that right now. But at the bottom here, I will see week 11, and it is not available. If I want to add items to this, I just need to click on the folder itself, or on the name of the folder, that'll bring me into my week 11. This at the top is going to tell you where you are actively in your Blackboard. On the top bar here, this will be how you can navigate. If I want to go back to my content, I just have to click content, and that brings me back one step. If I want to see my main hub, then I will be able to go to the sidebar and go back to homepage. But in my case, I'm going back to week 11.
So we do have a question in the online world.
Jim, my question is, and I think we spoke briefly yesterday about loading up tests in here. I guess I could build an item. I could build content, put a test in there, and have set the timing in there for it to be open between this time and that time. So I can control the time on the test that way. My question is around adding things like the Akindi link for multiple choice questions. And how do we get that to the students, and then how do they get that back to us so we can rescan that or put that in a format that Akindi can read it?
Okay, I can do that right now as the content that I'll be building here. If I wanted to add a file, I could do file here, but for the sake of Akindi, since this was built before we used Akindi, let's do that instead. Instead of build content, what I would be going to is tools and going to the Akindi. In this case, I want to say that is launch Akindi, and I'll submit. What this does is it sets it up to be a web link. It is a tool that we are partnered with, so it has a special section in tools. So if I click that link, then I'll be able to add another one or another one. And by doing so, I can go to launch Akindi. It will say that it is launching it, and then it'll bring me straight to launch Akindi. Now, conveniently, because it's done through Blackboard, if I hit launch, then it will tell me that I am in Medical Imaging 20 Winter. So wherever I build that launch Akindi window, it will automatically say that you are in that class. I can build an assessment from there. So got it, and I'd be able to create an assessment.
So you created this.
So I'm in course content. I'm in my week 11. I went to tools, Akindi, but I did do something that I had already mentioned I didn't want, and that was I made it viewable for the students. So I'm going back in to edit, and I'm permitting the viewers to view this content. I'm clicking no. So now the students will not be able to see this item when this folder goes live.
I just want to mention that a document was sent out by the Center for Academic Excellence warning faculty of the propensity for academic integrity issues when you put multiple choice true false questions on Blackboard, because we have no way of knowing who's in the room with them.
Right.
They're screen sharing, and we know that most of the test banks have been compromised by this point. So the suggestion was to replace multiple choice short answer with other forms of assessment if possible.
For this coming online delivery, yes.
Well, until we get the software in place that will allow us to monitor student eye movement. So until that's in place, not just for this session. It has been a problem all along.
Absolutely. And again,
And for the folks at home, this is a basic session, so we're just going to be covering basics of Blackboard. For exam set up, that would be advanced, and I would strongly recommend you refer to the Blackboard Help guides and also a Blackboard drop-in.
so I received this on Wednesday at about 5:45. So if you want to filter this, it was by Dan Roray.
It was by the team.
By the full team.
Yeah, he sent it out on our email.
Oh, sorry. Yes, that's okay. So when we are adding content, again, if we want to add a file or if we want to add an item, we would be able to do so as we have already. If I had a YouTube video that I wanted them to see, or there was some content online that you wanted them, some publication you wanted them to look up. What you could do is go down here to build content and then web link. By having this web link, I would be able to say, I wanted to go to St. Clair College Home, then I would go to I'd be able to copy this. I just did a Control C. You can right click and go to copy as well. And then in the URL, you would just hit paste. When you are pasting from here, you may see that this just says stclaircollege.ca, but it will load itself up as a proper website, as a HTTPS, www.stclaircollege.ca. So by doing so, this will become a link for the students. I can say this is going to be for the St. Clair, and just reiterate my St. Clair College homepage. If I want to attach a file to it as well, then I would be able to click on one of the two buttons there. Do I want it to open in a new window? In this case, yes, because I don't want Blackboard to disappear. I want it to open in a new window. Permit viewers, yes. So what they will see is this. It again is the World Wide Web symbol, and when I click on it, it will open the St. Clair website. So if I had a publication that I wanted them to read, then I would be able to load it as a web link there. One of the ones that Franco actually recommends here is the student code of conduct. So you would be able to search through the intranet, find that code of conduct, and it's on the website as well. And you would be able to copy and paste that in there as you so choose. So that way they will always see it as access. Would that be one that you'd recommend them statistic tracking as well?
I track everything.
I'm of the same mindset. I enable the tracking
Mhm.
just because you never know when you're going to need it, and it's not retroactive unless you click enable statistics.
Yeah.
You never know if you're going to need it.
So it's being recommended then that that you always track it. It doesn't seem to take up any extra resources on the machine, so there's no harm in tracking that. It could save your butt someday. I'm getting enthusiastic nods from the team.
Great appeals happen through our office.
Exactly. Okay, so that is essentially building the content for your courses. You can go to information to add important information for the students to see. And you can add your course content. In my case, they're usually PowerPoint slides and different online resources. So if I was going to set up my grade center for courses, on the gray bar again, I would not be able to do without students, I think, but there is no marks assigned on this. Nope, this one has no students.
Perfect.
So this is perfect. So here we are, we're in work placement. And as you can see, I've got my last name, my first name, user ID, or username, ID, last access, availability, weighted total, and total. But none of this is the content that I may have been creating. So what I need to do is then go to, if I don't want to see all of this, I can go to Manage and Categories. So in this case, I have my test and I have assignment. So these are some of the options that you will have. If I already have access to test and assignment, and say I want them to do a scenario, I could create a category and title that scenario. There are many programs that would utilize this, so I can hit a scenario, and that would be a new one that I've added. Because I have added it, I can also delete it. Just gonna make sure that I'm lock this one out as well. So that will be how I would be able to create a specific column under whether it's an assignment or a test, or in this case, a scenario. If I had 4 tests in a semester, or if I had 3 tests and I knew the weighting of everything, and you should because of your course outline, if I go to weighted total and I click on this, I can edit the column information for weighted total. Give it a second. And this is the weighted sum of all grades for a user based on item or category weighting. If I wanted to select and add the weight of each of my marks, because total and weighted total are different. Total is just going to be the cumulative marks that they have achieved out of some value. If I've got 4 tests at 100 marks each, I'm going to see the total as 400 and their mark out of 400. The weighted total is going to be showing them the value that it'll be at. So if I say that test 1 is 20%, test 2, 3, and 4 are at 10% each, it won't be just 300 out of 400. It will have a higher weight for that first test. It is worth more in the long run. So if I wanted to select my categories and I want to just bring over tests, I can select on test and move it over. In this case, I've got the category as a test. I now need to add a value, a percentage value. This test could be worth 25%. Don't hit enter. Yes. If you hit enter, you're going to be trying to leave. And it says, hey, your sum of your total weights have not equaled 100%. Are you okay with this? If you cancel, you'll be back here. But if you hit OK, you're going to be out of the screen and you'll have to come back in. So in tests, this will be, I'm at 25% for my test. If I want all the tests to be weighted equally, anytime I say that this assignment or this test will be 20%, then for every test, I'll need to have this as 60% and equally weighted. 3 tests, 20% each is my 60%. If I move assignments over there, I can then say I want my assignments to be worth 30%. By clicking out of it, on the bottom, I'm going to see my total weight, what I'm out of so far. And again, if I try to leave, it'll say you're not at 100%. If I want my assignments to be proportionally weighted or equally weighted, again, I can choose that. You can have an option to drop a grade, drop the highest grade, drop the lowest grade, set a curve, or you can use the lowest value to calculate or use the highest value to calculate based off of what their percentage will be. That will be where you can modify this.
Jim, can I have some?
Yes.
Can I just make up arbitrary numbers for my assignments in this emergency pandemic situation, Ms. Hill?
Well, I know what I would be saying to that, and I'm hoping that I get it right here, but you still need to work off of your course outline, and at the end of the day, we had to submit our modifications to our courses, what we will need to be doing to accommodate this online environment, and we had to submit that to both our boss and the CAE, and they need to run through an approval of whether or not that is inappropriate. You can't just say, well, I don't have a presentation anymore, all 30% of that goes onto their 30% report. Suddenly 60% of your class is based off of one report. That's not going to fly with them too well. So we do need to submit our going forwards, what we're going to be doing to the CAE. If you have any questions or concerns about how you will modify your existing course outline to accommodate online, speak to the CAE and they will be able to assist you with that.
The question was, if he makes a change in assessment, does he need prior approval No, but it should follow the policies and guidelines that we sent out in that document that I referred to earlier.
So with this, an option at the bottom is to select calculate as a running total. So if you select yes, it defaults to yes. If you have yes, then what that'll do is every time you add a mark for test 2, but test 3 hasn't been run yet, it'll say, as of right now, if you had to end the semester, their mark would be 70%. It hasn't calculated in the nullified grade point being test 3. So I'll only have information from 2 tests, and test 3 won't have been added. So a running total is going to say, if they were to end right now, this is the mark that they would be getting. So for the sake of argument, let's say that I'm requiring them to do a journal entry as well. I can make that journal 10%, and now I've got my weighted total of 100. It's happy. Nothing has changed to my main screen, but as I start to add marks, weighted total will then deviate from your normal total. If I wanted to now add my test, I can create a calculated column, and I'll go to weighted column. So column name could be, let's call this one, because I'm in the process of doing this one, X-ray test. The information that you contain here will be viewable in some cases to the students, and in some cases it's just better for you. The percentage is going to be the mark that they had received, and the score is going to be what they got out of whatever your test value is out. Your test was out of 100. That's a convenient number, but you'll be able to put 80 for your score, and the percentage will be 80 as well. In general, I do primary as score and secondary as percentage. That way I can just add what they received, because I can now select, I know what my test is out of, and I can just give them, they got 32 out of 41. Well, I don't know the percentage immediately. So in here, I now can see my selected column, including weighted total. So this will then be my my option. If I want to select a current grade, that's something that I'd be able to do as well. But this is going to be a test, so I'm moving a test over. And in this case, this test is going to be weighted at 20%. So by clicking submit, with that, I'll now have X-ray test. It will appear as a new column. If I go back to edit, I'll again be able to see all the values, and if I want it to be calculated as a running total. Now in this case, do I want my students to view it? In many cases, until all of your tests are marked, you don't want the students to be able to see it. You don't want someone to get a mark and then half the class suddenly realize the marks should be up, and why isn't my test score updated? They're going to send all of the emails to you. So you want it to be included in Grade Center calculations, but you may not want the students to view it. If you want to show the statistics, then you click yes, so that way you can click on the drop-down menu, and it will be able to show you all of the stats for that test. What the average was, what the best mark was, what the worst mark was. If you had a test, and so in this case, I just kind of noticed it right here, there's a slash next to the X-ray test. This is indicating that it is not viewable to the students. If you don't see that slash, they can see it. They will default to being able to see their total, and some professors may not want them to be able to view that. Some profs may not want them to view their weighted total either, because this is not necessarily accurate. If you have a running total, then they're going to think, great, I've got an 80%. I don't need to do well at all on their final exam. but it doesn't take into consideration the weight of the final exam, and then they may be able to calculate themselves out of a good mark. So you can hide that if you'd like by drop down, hide from students. Now it's hidden from them. If you see the slash, it is hidden. If I want to not do a weighted column, I want to be able to modify the weights and do changes on the fly, then what I would be able to do is just go to create a column. It doesn't have the drop down like the weighted column or the calculated column, sorry. So by clicking on create column, I can now say, what is this going to be? Well, this is going to be an assignment. Let's just call this and it defaults primary to score, and I do secondary percentage. It defaults to none, and what that would just mean is that they will only see the value. If I have the secondary, it'll be in parentheses on the side that says what percentage they received. How many points is it out of? It's a small assignment. It's only 10 points. I can make this an assignment. So it will run into my weighted total that's been set up that an assignment, any category that has an assignment, will be weighted equally. So again, do I want to show this to the students? Yes or no. If I want my statistics, I'll turn that on as well. Until I've set up everything else, generally speaking, I keep my column not viewable to students until I'm ready. If I have an assignment and I say I want it to be due on a certain date and time, I can say that it's due 1 week from today at midnight. So that would be end of day. Midnight is going to be 12 o'clock, meaning the morning of the next day, morning of this day. If I want it to be due Friday night, that is down to end of day, and it'll be 11:59 p.m. So, it's unfortunate. So, on my imaging assignment there, I will be able to see that and view that. If I go back into my weighted total, I can see my 2 assignments, and this would allow me to individually assess it. If I want to remove these and say I only want to make my test valued at the weight that I choose, I can move both of these over by shift clicking and then hitting that arrow. Now I'm given the opportunity to say the X-ray test is going to be 25%, and this one assignment is going to be 15%. It now shows me that I'm 40% of my weighted total.
So that would be a change you'd only make this semester.
This would be something that you would only be making this semester if I need to change
Yeah.
the values.
Yeah, and otherwise you would get those numbers from your course outline.
Correct. So I'm just going to cancel out of that and leave it as is. I have to go back and remove all of this anyway. So what are the options that you're able to do if you have an assignment or a presentation or something that is marked via a rubric, a very easily understood and strict rubric? You can have, under points possible, an associated rubric. I can add a rubric, and right now I have none set up for this, but I would be able to select a rubric and it would show me the name of it, the type, and whether or not I want to show the rubric to that student. Let's just make a create from existing. No, I've got nothing here. So if I wanted a rubric to say whether or not they did something well at a novice level, a competent level, or proficient, then this would be their weighting of 0%, 50%, or 100%. It's out of 3 marks there. They either got a 0, 1, or a 2. I can say what this one is based off of. Failed to perform assessment. So if I had something set up like this, I could say that 33% of the mark is whether or not they even answered a question. If they didn't show up, they get a 0. If they existed in the class but they didn't do anything, they get a 1. And if they answered, they would get a 2. That is only going to be weighting 33%. Organization, in this case, I could have, I can change this edit to be, so I would set this up to be questions answered, and going to say that that's going to be 33% of my weight. You can have, in a writing format, you would have your grammar and organization. If their essay is well kerneled, then you would be able to have your organization as, again, a 0, 1, or 2, 0, 1, or 2. You can add more columns to increase certain weights. So I can say that grammar needs to have another 75, and this is 100. Then I'll be able to select that level for grammar. As long as their balanced weight at the end is 100%. So in this case, there are only three methods of assessment that I'm going to be caring about, and they have 33%, 34%, 33%. And if someone does share a rubric with you, you can do this create from existing. So even if you had created a rubric and you said, you know what, I want to take that but modify it just a little bit. Instead of rebuilding it all, you would be able to create from existing, select that one, and modify it as you need to suit your needs. That's also really good in that if you have a rubric and then you realize that some students may be following the rubric to the letter, but they are vastly different in competency, you may be able to edit it so that next year you know this is something we need to watch out for as well. You can always evolve that rubric. So let's get out of here. Submit. So again, you don't need to go into edit column information to be able to hide it from the students or allow them to see it. In the drop-down menu, there is an option that says hide from student view. Be careful not to click hide from instructor view. If you do this, then you have to go and manage your columns and make sure that you are viewing that column. In fact, let's do that, and now it's gone.
Wait, where did it go?
Where did it go? So I did it quickly. So I would go to manage and then column organization. And this one is hidden. Well, if I click that and say show selected column, it's back. In this case, this is also where I can, nice segue, start saying, I don't need to see the username. I don't need to see their ID or the last time they accessed this. It's still going to be information that's saved, but if I'm always working on a smaller screen, I don't want to have to scroll all the way over because the whole first screen is taken up by this information. You cannot change the ones that say frozen. Those are always viewable. And by frozen, if you have ever worked in Excel, if you freeze a row or a column, then you can scroll across or up and down, and they stay in their respective position. So you could have 37 assessments. The CAE will not like that. But if you have that many assessments, you can scroll all the way over, and you'll always be able to see the username, the first name and last name of your students. So in this case, I want to see their user ID, but I don't really care, let's say, to see their username or their last access. So I can hide those selected columns. When I hit submit, I now only see their last name, their first name, their ID, the weighted total, and then their 2 tests. And this one is now back. So that is how you can go back. So again, you go to manage column organization, and then you'll be able to select and show whether you want to show them or hide them. And just to show, I had set it up at 10 o'clock. Oh, that's in my other one. But at 10 o'clock, it would go live. for my students in theory, but again, I'm locked out, and it is now viewable for them. When we left it off, it was not viewable, but because 10 o'clock had passed, it is now available. So one of the important things that you will have to do at the end of your semester, after all the marks are submitted, everything is done, and let's say you're working with a graduating class, they will still have access to their Blackboard for a little bit. They will still be able to log in and see their courses unless you make it not available. Now, there is the lockout in the top, but what you can also do, let's close that, is go into customization, properties, and then make this course available. Right now, it is set to no because I'm actively modifying it, so I locked it out. But I can hit yes, or I think I was told to avoid using this term availability. Use term availability. So it would only be available during the spring semester or something. Or there was, I don't remember the exact reason why, but I was advised against using that. If you use the term availability, and I think that was right, because you were the one, James, that had been at CEDP talking to us about setting this up, and I think you had said something about grade appealing for that term availability, because it will only show it during that term, and if someone tries to appeal a grade, they're not appealing it during that term. It's going to be after they receive their marks, which is after the term. So you can make the course available at the end of your semester, and assuming you have no appeals, you can say, no, it's not available, and now students won't be able to view it. When you have it set to no, it is easy for you to tell by going back to my institution, and it will clearly say not currently available. So I'm editing medical imaging, so that is not available, neither is this work placement. So again, it's customization, properties, make course available, and you can click yes or no. If I had to display a message and I say, you know, class is being moved from this room to this room, we're going to be going into the lab or off to the Ford Center. What you can do is go into your, I can go into course tools and make an announcement. Now I'm in my announcement page. Another way of getting there is if you're in the home page, you can just click on more announcements, and then you'll be able to create an announcement as well. So creating an announcement, it will appear below that line. So in this case, I would be able to say, test will be moved to computer lab. So I'll be able to say, you know what, this is going to be an online test, so come to computer lab here. If it is date restricted and I only want to show it for a day or a week or however long I care, it can be within a half-hour period, depending on what time you pick. So I can display it as of right now and only display it for the duration of the test. And then once that test is done, then they'll be able to, it'll automatically be removed and they won't be able to receive it. This email announcement is an option that you can check. If you check this, it will send an announcement alert to the students immediately. Otherwise, it'll do it the next time Blackboard refreshes, and the students will get it regardless of if you click it. It just won't force push an email. It'll wait until the next time Blackboard does a refresh, and it'll say, okay, I need to send out these messages, and it will do so at that time. But if you want them to know immediately, you send a copy of this announcement immediately. If I want them to take a look at this action item, or I say, hey, I want you to view this right before class today, I would be able to post a link or post a Word document, and I would be able to have them view that one. At the end, I can hit, okay, I don't want that to be date restricted, and I'm not going to bother with that. Yeah, well, there are no students in this class, so I'm not going to get one. So new announcements appear below this line. Past announcements will be above, and then this one is going to be the one that pops up, and it says test announcement. It'll provide you with the information there. It's posted to which group and the course name. So, are there any questions about this? Because I happen to have finished everything that is needed for the basics early. So, if I was at my home page, I would be able to go to users and group and the course management, and then I can select users. And then this is where I would be able to remove from receiving information. In this case, if I have, this is also helpful when you have students who have dropped your program. On SIS, automatically they will be removed by registration and CAE. But they won't remove it from your Blackboard. So you will still see them as a student. They will still be getting zeros across the board because they're not attending class, not attending anything. And then when you go to midterm marks, you'll see, hey, they don't exist. This would be able to allow you to remove them. The problem is, be very careful, because if you do remove them and then you have to add them back, they will not have any of their previous marks that existed. So be very careful when you're removing anything, and make sure that you're checking against the latest registration documents to make sure that you are removing a student that is truly in need of removal.
So Linda is going to look over the chat window and review your questions for the folks at home. She's asked us to demonstrate how to download your grades into an Excel spreadsheet. So before we do that, let's just add a user to this course and we'll remove them later. So if we go to click Find Users to Enroll, we're going to hit Browse, and I'm going to type in we're going to select username, or actually better yet, email. So JLapierre at St. Clair College, can't type with these fingers, one-handed, .ca. JLapierre at stclaircollege.ca, hit go. There I am. So there's a preview user. I'm just going to select myself, and I'm going to hit submit. I'm going to change my role to course builder. This will allow that individual to have access to your course, but not your grade center. So they won't be able to accidentally change your grades, and they won't be able to view your students' marks, again, maintaining confidentiality. And hit submit. And now James is there. And if you read over, he is a course builder. Okay, so if I were to log into my Blackboard, I would not be able to view this individual's, Jim Durocher's grade center. How do I remove someone from a course? Just go to users. And again, when you're cleaning up your Blackboard roster in accordance with your SIS roster, and only in accordance with your SIS roster, I don't recommend deleting a user, but I do recommend hiding a user, especially if they've already earned marks in your course. But in this case, James does not belong in this course. It was an accident. It was an automatic enroll. I'm going to remove the selected individual. You'll notice a pop-up window shows up that says this cannot be undone. Once you remove James, you've lost all of the data, all the statistics tracking, and anything that you were tracking on that individual. So preferred is, if the user is halfway through your course, is to just hide them from your course and not make this available to them. I don't think James needs access to this course, so I've removed him from your course. So next question was Grade Center, and how do we download our grades into an Excel file? If you click on the Grade Center icon in your course management tool, you can scroll down to Full Grade Center, or what needs grading, but we'll do Full Grade Center. Over here, we will hit we'll hover over the icon that says work offline, and we're going to select download. Now, do you want the full grade center? I prefer the full grade center because I can play with information in the files and the cells in Excel. So I'm going to, or do you want just a selected column? And you could pick that selected column. I want the full grade center. And I'm going to hit submit, and I'm going to get a pop-up that says, are you sure? So I'm going to download this, and you're going to notice in the bottom of my screen, it's now downloading as an Excel file. It's now, I can open it. I do get this alert. I'm going to hit yes, and there it is. There are no users in this course, but if there were, there would be grades or points and information and data right here. I would then want to click the Save As button, give this a name that makes sense to me in my course and my year or my term, and then I'm going to save it as an Excel file and hit save. I'm not going to save it as the original format. It was very important to change it to Excel and not leave it as a Unicode. Hopefully that was helpful. Linda, were there any other questions?
No, but that's the document I bring to Mark's meetings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's a question here from Thomas Bradley.
Yeah.
I need to have students submit discussion question assignments directly to Blackboard so that marks will go directly into gradebook. Can this be reviewed, or is this the advanced section topic?
That is a great topic, Thomas. What I will let you know is Pat Papadeas has done an amazing presentation that will be available on video. And so you'll be able to watch the live or the hybrid delivery of her discussion board. There is another session this afternoon with Pat, and she will be walking people through how to create discussion boards that are meant for marks that automatically, once you select the marks and give the marks based on your rubric, will automatically populate in your grade center. You may want to come back at 1 o'clock to the exact same link, and Pat will be on the discussion board features of Blackboard this afternoon.
Okay, I've entered that session this afternoon. Is there a link that I can get a copy of now that I can access that?
Doesn't look like there's any other questions, and we finished well within our time. So we made a very nice, short, concise video.
I know that there was someone who was also interested in adding a test to Blackboard, and yesterday during our meeting we have a daily meeting with Ralph, and I said that I could go over some information with them if they wanted. So if someone wants to stay online, I can show them just very briefly how to add the test and make sure that if you do have any multiple choice, how you can randomize them and randomize the answers. And I think it was just the minutia like that. So.
And I just want to say thank you everyone for joining us virtually. We've captured your names for attendance purposes and the support that the CAE is providing during this time. And I'm going to stop the video now.